Hi everyone, my name is Katie. Welcome back to my channel, and for today's video, I'm doing a interview tips video specifically for PGY1 pharmacy residents. Though if you're applying for PGY2, it does apply as well. If you're applying for any other like clinical health field based position, it can also apply as well. But that's going to be today's video. I am a current PGY1 pharmacy resident, so I did go through this process last year. So I'll be kind of sharing what helped for me, advice that I have for you as applicants going through the process this year. I do want to say, if you're not watching this video on like the timeline that I posted out, meaning you're watching it like next application cycle or later, make sure to also check out my forecast video as well. I kind of explain like how to use it, give advice, things like that. So go ahead and check that one out. If you're watching this when this comes out, obviously it's past that time. It's interview season. So congrats for making it this far. But let's just go ahead and get started. So I'm kind of splitting this video into like topics. Yeah, the first topic is gonna be like what to bring and wear. So obviously, you're gonna want to dress to impress. It's very important to look nice, get a first good impression, because the first impression, if you ruin it, it's kind of hard to get it back. It's possible, but it's difficult. So you're gonna want to wear like a blazer, a nice top, and slacks, just something that's like very professional looking, very nice. You also do want to keep in mind that you want to be comfortable. So especially when choosing your shoe type, I would obviously choose something that's professional, but I would choose something that's also very comfortable. I made the mistake last year of having shoes that were very nice looking, but were very painful. And I was doing a couple of in-person interviews and doing tours around the hospital, and that was just very painful experience. So make sure to get comfy shoes. Make sure you break them in before like actual interview date. You will thank yourself for it. That's something I wish I did. Another thing I would recommend is bringing a Padfolio. I have mine down here. So this is my Padfolio. I actually bought a new one this year because my old one, I actually left it back home and I needed a new one. So I got this one. I'll link it on Amazon. I can link both of them, my old one and my new one. I think I like this new one better, though I actually haven't used it yet, but I did get it. I think I like this one better. This is what it looks like. It's just all black. It does have like zipper enclosure as well. And then if you open it, it has like a notepad here. The notepad came with it, but it has like a clipboard thingamabob, so you can clip in papers or you can use the notepad that's provided. Has a lot of different things here. I like that it has like credit card or like just license, just card holders here. There's also a phone holder here that's like an elastic thing, so it can stretch. Pockets, and then there's also like a laptop sleeve. I'm not gonna need that, but it is there. So I really like this one. I haven't used it yet, but I do like it, so I'll link it. But I would recommend getting a Padfolio because I wanted something that would like hold my phone, my calculator, my cards, my pens, my papers, everything that I needed. And those are all things you're going to need. I do think it was just, at least for me, a better option than trying to manage like papers and a bag and just a lot of things. So I think it had everything in one spot very nicely. So I would recommend getting one. The next thing is like copies of your CV. I would also recommend bringing this in case they ask for it. I would highly doubt they would, but it's better to be safe than sorry. This is a piece of advice that I was actually told by someone. It's just better to have it in case you need it, but if you don't, you can just shred it after, it's fine. And then the final thing I would recommend is like a water bottle, just any water bottle, as long as it's like professional looking, obviously. But it's very important to keep hydrated, especially with all that talking you're gonna be doing on interview day, and you're gonna want to be hydrated, so make sure to bring a water bottle as well. Okay, so then the next section that I have is it's a very small one. It's for practicing, which is gonna be quite important for interviews. If you have the opportunity to do mock interviews, I would highly, highly, highly suggest doing so. It's a great opportunity if you are able to do it. I was very lucky that my school did provide this service for us. Basically, my regional coordinator offered mock interviews for anybody who wanted it, whether it was like they were trying to get a residency, they were trying to like get a job, like for any reason, and we were able to do a mock interview. So that was super cool. However, if you don't have the option to do like a formal mock interview with like a pharmacy person, it would still work with like a friend or family member too. As long as they have like a good list of questions to ask, totally will work, totally will be fine. Doesn't matter. Honestly, you could even practice with a stuffed animal if it comes down to it, and if that's all that you have available to you, like a stuffed animal is totally gonna work as well. Obviously the stuffed animal can't talk, but you can basically think of the question and then just answer the question how you would respond in an interview. I do think like preparing interview, like practice like this is very important so that you sound prepared, you know what you're talking about, but you do not want to sound robotic. So you want to come off as prepared, but not rehearsed, if that makes sense. So mock interviews are great if you have the ability to do so. The next section I have is answering questions. So honestly, what I did is I made a document with common interview questions and my like bullet points of general responses, just to get an idea of things that I would like to highlight and things I would like to say. It just helped me brainstorm basically what I wanted to say in different scenarios. And I don't know, maybe some common questions would be like, tell me about yourself. You'd probably want a couple of bullet points that you'd want to think about as like talking points of what you want to say when the interviewer asks you this question. Why did you want to do a residency? Or why did you want to specifically, why did you specifically apply for residency at our program? What's your biggest strengths and weaknesses? Things like that. And I have another one I would recommend too, that I wasn't explicitly asked, but would be important if you were asked this, is knowing each place's motto, or what's it called? Mission statement, knowing that place's mission statement. Just in case you're asked, because it would look very bad if you're applying for this place and you don't even know their mission statement. So I would just know it in case you need it, but I didn't end up needing it last year at all, but just a heads up. And a good document that kind of outlines a lot of questions that you could be asked is, it's titled 110 Questions UCSF Students Were Asked in a Residency Interview. I'll try to link the site in the description box below, but I'm sure if you just Google that, it'll come up. Those are some good example questions that maybe you can hand to your parents, your friends, your family, anybody to practice interviewing with, and just get familiar with those questions because they are commonly asked questions. And then lastly, there's going to be situational questions as well. Not only background questions, but situational questions are going to be very important because they're going to want to see how you would react or respond in a certain situation. So when answering these situational questions, it's important to use the STAR method. I'm sure most people have probably heard of this before, but if you haven't, it does stand for situation, task, so the task would be your goal, action, so what you did, how you overcame the obstacle, and then the result, so what did you learn from the experience. And just making sure you follow that kind of outlines things that you should be saying, because obviously you don't want to be oh, this is the situation, and that was it. You don't learn anything from that. So it's important to try to keep that outline in mind when you're answering those types of questions. And if you're watching this when I'm posting it, it might be a little bit late for this, but I would recommend to keep track of interventions that you made throughout your rotations. It's very important to have a bank, quote unquote, of interventions that you've had in case they ask for certain situations based off of that. So what I did is I wrote down interventions the day after I did them. When I would come home from my rotation, I would basically write down any important interventions that I did that day. And that way I would have situations to talk about in my interviews. And then I wouldn't forget all the details. So I knew if I just kept it in there in the back of my head, I would probably forget the details. So I would recommend just writing it down ASAP, keeping a running document basically of interventions. And I will say it is best to have interventions that are kind of more focused on the area of PGY1 or PGY2, I guess, that you're applying to if possible. So if your PGY1 is more like AmCare focused, you're gonna want to maybe have like interventions that are more AmCare focused. If your PGY1 is gonna be more acute care focused, same thing. You'd probably want one that's a little more acute care focused intervention. That way it just shows like, this is why you're applying to this specialized field. It's because you want to do more of acute care. So this is a fun acute care intervention that I did. So I think it helps. Obviously, if you haven't had that rotation yet, you can't do that. But that's totally fine. It won't like break you, but it might give you a little bit extra bonus points. And then my next tip is to be ready to talk about anything that is on your CV and letter of intent. Anything on there is fair game. It is all fair game. You put it on your application, they could ask about it. So make sure you know everything like the back of your hand. That's very, very important. And nothing's gonna be worse than them asking you about something on your CV and you being like, I don't know. Like that's not gonna be good. This also just doesn't only include your experiences, but also topics that you covered in your presentations and rotations that are listed as well. If you did a presentation on diabetes, and they ask you a question about diabetes, it's gonna look bad if you don't know things about diabetes because you literally did a presentation on it. So just things like that. It's important to make sure you know everything that's on your CV. My next tip has to do with if you don't know the answer to a question, which is bound to happen. Happened to me, it's gonna happen, especially for clinical questions. If you don't know the answer right away, it's okay to just take a second to think, no matter what the question is. If it's situational, if it's clinical, just take a second to think. It's better to have a pause than lots of ums, or saying something that you didn't mean to say. Basically, when this happens, you can say something along the lines of, oh, that's a really good question. Let me think about that. And then that could give you a little bit of extra time to actually think about that and facilitate a response that you would actually want to say. And my final thing is that it's best not to ramble. I would recommend keeping your answers concise, generally about 1 to 2 minutes-ish. I wouldn't go over 2 minutes. That would be kind of a long answer. I would try to keep it to about 1 to 2 minutes, if you can. Okay, so now just talking about the clinical portion specifically about that. So when you're studying for clinical portion, I would focus on high yield disease states. And even more so, you can tailor your studying to the type of programs you're applying to. For example, like AmCare versus acute care. Obviously, it'd be best to know them both because you could be asked questions for both, but it would look pretty bad if you're applying to an AmCare and you didn't know some of the basics of AmCare. That being said, they could ask about both. For an acute care program, for example, they could be hospitalized, right? The patient could be hospitalized, and then you would make a recommendation for something, and then the patient would be discharging, and then you would make a recommendation on something. So it would tie elements to both. But basically, just a couple of examples of high yield disease states that might be worth studying and making sure you know. For acute care, some of them would be maybe disease states associated with anticoagulation. So that being stroke, DVT, ACS, AFib, and then maybe some ID stuff like pneumonia, skin soft tissue, UTIs, maybe COPD aspirations, sepsis, and then also electrolytes, seizures, heart failure, DKA. Those are all pretty important acute care topics that I would recommend knowing. And then for AmCare, I would recommend anticoagulation as well. So warfarin, DOACs, hypertension, diabetes, dyslipidemia, asthma, COPD, heart failure, things like that. Obviously, that's not an all-inclusive list, but it is some stuff you might want to tailor and focus your studying towards. And if you're unsure of a clinical question, rather than just saying, I don't know, because you don't want to just say that and leave it at that, or you also just don't want to guess. because that's going to be bad. Like, as a pharmacist, are you just going to guess the answer if a doctor asks you a question you don't know? No, you're not, because that's going to potentially kill a patient. So if you're unsure of a question, what you should do in the interview is you should explain your thought process and mention guidelines and resources that you would use to answer that question. So oftentimes, I will say, programs might ask like tricky clinical questions because they want to see your thought process more so than getting the question 100% correct, because no one's going to know everything. Like, it's just not possible. No one's going to know everything. However, it's important in your practice. They want to see how you would solve questions you don't know, because everyone's bound to not know things. So very important. And that's pretty much wraps up my clinical portion. My final section is just going to be like, at the end of the interview, what should you do? So at the end of the interview, they're going to ask you, do you have any questions for us? Because basically the whole interview, I mean, not the whole interview, but like a lot of the interview, they're going to be asking you questions. So after they're asking you questions, it's going to be your turn to do the same. And when it's your turn, you are not going to say, no, I don't have any questions. You should have questions. That's going to be important. Basically, you want to ask questions that show that you're interested in the program, that you want to learn more, and that you did your research. Obviously, you shouldn't ask a question that is easily found on the residency website. That's going to look bad. It's going to look like you didn't do your research. It looks like you didn't care. You're just asking a question to ask a question. That's not what you want to do. So think of a good couple amount of questions. I would honestly shoot for maybe 5. You probably don't need to ask them all. I generally think I asked around maybe around like 3. But I liked to have like a lot of questions in case there was some extra time at the end of the interviews, because I didn't want like awkward, nothing to happen. So just to facilitate conversation. And then my next thing at the end of the interview is just to thank them for their time. Obviously, they did not have to extend you an interview, so you should be thankful for it. Doing it both in person and email, I think, is good. At least that's what I did. I don't know if you necessarily need to, but I think it's polite. Basically, I just tried to always email the program within 24 hours after the conclusion of my interview to thank them for their time, and also say something that I particularly enjoyed. So call out a certain topic, or call out a certain thing that we talked about, to just show that I really paid attention, that this is what I took away from the interview, and that it's not just a generic thanks email. There's something a little special about it too. So hopefully make them remember you and put a positive impact on your name. And then the final thing I would recommend is when you get home, or if it's like a virtual interview, after the interview, I would jot down any feelings or notes that you had from the interview, because it's important to remember it's not only a time for the programs to get to know you, it's also a time for you to get to know the programs, because you're going to be signing on to this program for a whole year. So you want to make sure it's somewhere you actually want to be, it's somewhere you like, it's somewhere you think you'll fit in and get along with the people there. And so these notes will be very important and very helpful when you're ranking all of your programs come the rank order list being due. That being said, if you did not have good vibes or good energy during the interview and you were like, ooh, I don't like this, don't rank them. You wouldn't want to be there. You should put you should only rank programs that you are okay with being there. And don't rank your programs based off of how you felt about the interview, because you could very much have just felt bad, but you did fine. Also, it's in the favor of the applicant. So if you put your number one choice as X program, and X program wants you to, you're gonna go there. But say you're like, oh man, I did really bad at X program. They're my number one choice. I don't think I'm gonna get them, so I'm gonna put them at number 4. What if X program really wanted you? You could have gone to your number 1, but you put them as number 4. So don't rank based off of how you felt about the interview or how you felt your performance was. Rank based off of your fit with the program, how you think it will be, and if you actually want to go there. So yeah, that concludes pretty much everything. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below. Check out my other forecast video if you haven't already, if it's not the time this is being uploaded. I wish you the best of luck with the application process and the interview process, and try not to stress out too much. I know it's hard. But yeah, I'll see you again next week for another video. Bye.